The sound of glass touching was so soft that no one noticed it at first. In the middle of the grand dining room, under the glow of an expensive chandelier, billionaire Adrian Keller sat calmly at the head of the table. His focus was on his phone, reviewing numbers, contracts, and decisions that could change millions of lives overnight. Around him, the room was quiet, controlled, and perfect, just the way he liked it. Nothing in his world happened by accident, except this. Near the far end of the table stood Sophia, the maid. Her presence was almost invisible, like it always was. She had learned long ago that the less she was noticed, the safer her job remained. Her small toddler, Leo, stood beside her, holding onto her leg with tiny fingers. He wasn't supposed to be there. Employees were never allowed to bring family into the billionaire's private space. But that night, Sophia had no choice. Daycare had closed early, and she couldn't afford to miss work. One mistake could cost her everything. Leo's eyes, wide and curious, moved across the room. He didn't understand wealth, power, or rules. He only saw shapes, light, and people. His attention stopped on the glass in front of Adrian Keller, a crystal glass filled with a dark, sparkling drink. It looked different from anything Leo had ever seen. Adrian didn't notice the child watching him. He didn't notice much beyond his own world. But Leo noticed him. Slowly, quietly, in the innocent way only a toddler could, Leo stepped forward. Sophia was distracted for just a moment, answering a quiet instruction from the house manager. It was only a few seconds. Just a few seconds where no one was watching him. Leo reached the table. His small hands touched the cold surface. He stared at the billionaire's drink, then at the second glass sitting nearby, another crystal glass, almost identical, placed slightly to the side. No one thought anything of it. To everyone else, they were just two glasses. But to Leo, they were something else. Without fear, without hesitation, he switched them. The movement was small, silent, almost meaningless. He stepped back beside his mother, his face calm, as if nothing had happened. Moments later, Adrian Keller picked up the glass. He didn't look at it closely. Why would he? This was his home, his table, his staff, his control. He raised it to his lips and took a sip, and then something changed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't obvious. But his eyes shifted slightly. His expression tightened for just a second. The kind of second most people would miss. But Sophia didn't miss it. Her heart stopped because she knew what Leo had done. And in that moment, Adrian Keller slowly lowered the glass and turned his head toward them. Adrian Keller's eyes didn't move away from Sophia and her toddler. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something quieter, something sharper. The room remained silent. But Sophia felt as if every sound had suddenly become louder. Her own breathing, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the soft hum of the air conditioning. Leo held onto her leg, unaware of the invisible storm forming around them. Adrian slowly placed the crystal glass back on the table. His fingers stayed wrapped around it for a moment, as if he were thinking, calculating. He had built his life on noticing details others ignored. One small change could mean everything in his world, profit or loss, loyalty or betrayal. And tonight, something was different. Sophia lowered her eyes quickly, trying to look calm. Her hands were steady on the outside, but inside, panic spread through her chest. She remembered exactly what she had seen just seconds earlier. Leo stepping forward, his tiny fingers touching the glasses, his innocent curiosity guiding him. He didn't know what he had done, but Sophia knew. She also knew something else. Those glasses had not been placed randomly. Adrian's personal assistant had brought them in earlier, carefully setting one directly in front of him and another slightly off to the side. It was routine. Everything in this mansion followed routine. Nothing was accidental. Sophia's mind raced. Should she say something? Should she explain? But explain what? That her toddler had touched the billionaire's drink? That he had switched the glasses without understanding? Her job was already fragile. One complaint, one mistake, and she could lose the only income keeping her and Leo safe. Across the table, Adrian leaned back slightly in his chair. His expression remained calm, but his eyes moved briefly toward the second glass, the one now sitting where his original drink should have been. He noticed Of course he noticed. Adrian Keller hadn't become one of the most powerful billionaires by ignoring small things. "Who brought these in?" he asked quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the entire room. The house manager stepped forward immediately. "I did, sir." Adrian nodded slowly, his gaze still thoughtful. "And no one touched them after that?" The question hung in the air. Sophia's throat tightened. The manager hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "No, sir." Leo shifted slightly beside her, his small shoe making a faint sound against the floor. Adrian's eyes moved again. This time, they settled directly on the child. It was an unusual sight in his home, a toddler standing in the middle of his private dining space, holding onto a maid's uniform. Leo looked back at him without fear, without guilt, just curiosity. Adrian studied him carefully. Sophia felt exposed, as if every secret she carried was suddenly visible. "I didn't know staff were allowed to bring children here," Adrian said calmly. "They're not, sir," the manager replied quickly, glancing at Sophia. Sophia opened her mouth, her voice barely steady. "I'm sorry, sir. I had no one to watch him. It won't happen again." Adrian didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked back at the glass, then at Leo, then at Sophia. It was a simple sequence, but it carried weight, because Adrian Keller wasn't just looking. He was remembering. Earlier that evening, before dinner had started, he had received a quiet message. A message that warned him to be careful, that not everyone around him could be trusted. At the time, he hadn't reacted, but now, with one glass slightly out of place and one innocent child standing nearby, the warning didn't feel so distant anymore. Adrian Keller didn't believe in coincidences. Not after everything he had been through. His success as a billionaire wasn't built on luck. It was built on awareness, on reading people, on noticing the smallest shift in behavior. And tonight, there were too many small shifts. The warning message he had received earlier was still fresh in his mind. It had been sent from a private number, one only a few people could access. "Be careful tonight. Not everything is as it seems." At the time, Adrian had dismissed it as paranoia or a failed attempt to disturb him. Powerful people often receive strange messages. Most of them meant nothing. But now, sitting in his own dining room, staring at a glass that might not be the same one placed in front of him, he wasn't so sure. Across the room, Sophia could feel the weight of his silence. It pressed against her chest, making it harder to breathe. Leo leaned gently against her leg, calm and unaware. He trusted her completely. He didn't understand billionaires, private staff rules, or the invisible tension filling the room. All he knew was that something had changed. Sophia replayed the moment again and again in her mind. Leo's tiny hands, the soft sound of glass moving, the way he stepped back so naturally, as if it meant nothing. To him, it did mean nothing. But to Adrian Keller, everything meant something. The house manager remained still, waiting for instructions. Other staff members avoided eye contact, pretending to focus on their duties. In a place like this, survival depended on staying invisible when tension appeared. Adrian finally spoke again, his voice calm but distant. "How long have you worked here?" The question was directed at Sophia. She swallowed. "Almost 8 months, sir." He nodded slightly. 8 months wasn't long, but it wasn't new either. Long enough to observe routines. Long enough to understand patterns. His eyes moved to Leo again. "What's his name?" "Leo, sir." Leo looked up when he heard his name, his wide eyes meeting Adrian's without hesitation. There was no fear in them, no guilt, just innocence. Adrian found that unusual. Most adults couldn't hold his gaze that way. His fingers tapped lightly against the table, a habit he had when thinking. He remembered the assistant who had placed the drinks earlier. He remembered the exact position of the glasses. He remembered the warning message. And now, he remembered something else. The second glass wasn't originally that close. It had been placed slightly farther away, far enough that he wouldn't pick it up by mistake. But now it was closer. Close enough. His attention shifted briefly toward the security camera in the corner of the room. It was small, almost unnoticeable. Installed for safety. For control. It had seen everything. Across the room, Sophia noticed where he was looking. Her heart pounded harder. She hadn't thought about the cameras. Of course there were cameras. This was a billionaire's private mansion. Every hallway, every entrance, every important room was protected. The camera had seen Leo. It had seen him switch the glasses. A cold wave of fear moved through her. Not because Leo had done something wrong, but because she didn't know what Adrian Keller would believe. Would he see it as innocent curiosity or something else entirely? Adrian slowly stood from his chair. The movement was calm, controlled, but it changed everything. Because when a billionaire stands in silence, everyone feels it. His eyes remain on Sophia and Leo as he spoke quietly to the house manager, asked security to save the dining room footage. Sophia's breath caught, and in that moment, she realized this was no longer just about a drink. It was about trust. The words hung in the air like a quiet storm. Asked security to save the dining room footage. No one argued. No one questioned him. In Adrian Keller's world, instructions were followed immediately. The house manager nodded and stepped away, already reaching for the small communication device in his pocket. Sophia felt the ground beneath her feet turn fragile. Her fingers tightened gently on Leo's shoulder, not to restrain him, but to comfort herself. Leo looked up at her, sensing her tension, his small face confused but calm. He didn't know cameras could turn innocence into suspicion. Across the room, Adrian stood still, his posture relaxed, but his mind moving faster than anyone could see. He replayed everything again. The warning message, the placement of the glasses, the child's presence, the subtle shift he had noticed when he took that sip. Nothing obvious had happened, and yet something felt wrong. He wasn't a man who ignored instinct. His instincts had protected him when competitors tried to destroy his company. They had warned him when trusted partners turned dishonest. They had kept him ahead of threats no one else could see coming. And right now, his instincts were loud. His gaze moved once more to Leo. The toddler didn't look dangerous. He looked small, fragile, human. But Adrian wasn't studying his strength. He was studying the timing. Why tonight? Why? On the same night he received that warning, did something unusual happen right in front of him? The manager returned after a moment. "Sir, security is retrieving the footage now." Adrian gave a small nod. "Bring it to my office." Office. Not here. Not in front of everyone. The decision was deliberate, because whatever the truth was, he wanted to see it alone. Sophia heard the word and felt her chest tighten further. His office meant privacy, control, judgment. Her thoughts spiraled. Would they think she had told Leo to do it? Would they believe she had tried to interfere with something? She had spent months working quietly, proving she was trustworthy, dependable, invisible. Invisible was safe. But tonight, she was no longer invisible. Leo shifted again, his tiny hand gripping her uniform. He didn't understand billionaires or security footage. He only understood that his mother was afraid. Adrian began walking toward the door, his footsteps calm, measured, echoing softly against the polished floor. Each step felt heavier than the last. Halfway to the door, he stopped. He turned back. His eyes met Sophia's. It wasn't anger she saw. It was focus. "Bring the child," he said quietly. The words froze her. Not aggressive, not loud, but final. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear in her ears. The house manager looked surprised, but didn't question him. No one questioned him. Sophia hesitated for a fraction of a second. Every instinct told her to protect Leo, to keep him away from whatever was coming. But refusing wasn't an option. Refusing meant losing everything. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes, sir." Leo didn't resist when she lifted him into her arms. He rested his head against her shoulder, calm in a way only children could be. Adrian watched them carefully. There was something about the child's calmness that unsettled him more than panic would have, because calm meant honesty, or it meant certainty. He turned again and continued toward his office, knowing that in just a few moments, the security footage would reveal the truth. Behind him, Sophia followed, her steps unsteady but determined. The hallway felt longer than ever before. The cameras had already seen everything, and whatever they showed would change everything. Adrian Keller's office was colder than the rest of the mansion, not in temperature, but in feeling. The room was large, quiet, and controlled. just like him. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the dark city, where thousands of lights glowed beneath the night sky. This was where Adrian made decisions that shaped companies, ended partnerships, and changed lives. Tonight, the decision waiting for him felt different. The security screen was already on when he entered. One of the security staff stood beside it, nervous but professional. The footage was paused, frozen on the exact moment inside the dining room. Sophia stepped in slowly, holding Leo close. She stayed near the door, as if crossing further into the room might make things worse. Her heart pounded so loudly she was afraid others could hear it. Adrian walked the screen. "Play it," he said. The video began moving. The dining room appeared exactly as it had been minutes ago. Adrian sitting at the table, the glasses placed carefully in front of him, the staff moving in routine patterns. Then Sophia appeared on screen, and beside her, Leo. Sophia held her breath. The footage showed Leo stepping forward, small, curious, innocent. It showed his tiny hand reaching the table. It showed him touching the glasses. And then Adrian leaned closer, because something unexpected appeared. Leo didn't switch the glasses immediately. He stopped. He looked up, not at Sophia, not at the table, at someone else. The room inside the video showed a figure standing partially in the hallway entrance, only visible for a moment, easy to miss. But Leo saw them, and Leo smiled. In the video, the toddler paused, as if waiting. Then, only after that moment, he gently moved the glasses. Sophia felt a chill move through her body. She hadn't seen that part before. She hadn't noticed anyone in the hallway. The video continued. Leo stepped back to her side. The figure in the hallway was gone just seconds later, disappearing before anyone else turned. Adrian's voice broke the silence. "Pause it." The screen froze on the empty hallway. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. His eyes narrowed not in anger, but in realization. "Zoom in," he said quietly. The security staff adjusted the footage, enlarging the hallway entrance. The image became grainier, but the shape was clear enough. A person had been standing there, watching. Sophia's breathing became shallow. She hadn't been imagining the warning in Adrian's behavior. This wasn't just about Leo anymore. Someone else had been there. Someone Leo had seen. Someone Leo had reacted to. Adrian's mind moved quickly. The warning message, the drink, the timing, the unknown figure, and Leo's reaction. Children didn't hide intentions well. They reacted honestly, naturally, which meant Leo hadn't acted randomly. He had responded. Adrian slowly turned his head toward Sophia. "Do you know anyone else who was near that room tonight?" he asked. His voice remained calm, but the question carried weight. Sophia shook her head quickly. "No, sir, I didn't see anyone." And that was the truth. She hadn't. But Leo shifted slightly in her arms. His small eyes moved toward the screen, toward the hallway, as if he remembered. Adrian noticed. He stepped closer, his voice softer now. "Leo," he said carefully. Leo looked at him. Adrian pointed gently toward the frozen image on the screen. "Did you see someone there?" Leo didn't answer with words. He simply nodded. The room fell into complete silence, because that meant one thing. Leo hadn't just switched the billionaire's drink out of curiosity. He had done it after seeing someone else watching. The nod was small, almost invisible, but it changed everything. Adrian Keller felt a quiet pressure settle deep in his chest. Leo wasn't guessing. Children didn't guess like adults did. They reacted to what they saw, what they felt. And Leo had seen someone. Someone standing in that hallway, watching closely enough to catch his attention. Adrian turned back to the security officer. "Check the hallway camera." Same time. The officer nodded quickly and began typing. The screen flickered as another angle appeared. The hallway outside the dining room came into view, empty at first. Then a shadow moved. A person stepped partially into frame. Sophia leaned forward without realizing it, her heart pounding. The figure wasn't a stranger. It was someone from inside the house. Adrian recognized him instantly. Daniel, one of the newer security assistants. Quiet, efficient, invisible enough that most people never questioned his presence. But Adrian remembered hiring him only 3 weeks ago, recommended through a third-party contractor. His record had been clean, his behavior professional. Until now, the footage showed Daniel standing still, his eyes focused toward the dining room, watching the table, watching the glass, watching Adrian. Then, just as quickly, Daniel stepped back out of frame. The room fell silent again. Adrian's jaw tightened. The warning message suddenly made sense. It hadn't been random. Someone had known something was going to happen. And Leo had seen Daniel standing there. Leo had reacted in the only way a toddler could. He had moved the glasses. Not out of fear, not out of planning, but instinct. Adrian slowly exhaled, the realization settling into place. If Leo hadn't touched the glasses, Adrian would have taken a longer drink without hesitation. He would have never questioned anything. The interruption had forced him to notice, to slow down, to question. Leo hadn't caused the problem. He had exposed it. Adrian turned toward Sophia, who still held Leo tightly, her face pale with fear and confusion. "You didn't know," Adrian said quietly. It wasn't a question. Sophia shook her head, her voice barely steady. "No, sir." He believed her. Her fear wasn't the fear of guilt. It was a fear of losing everything. Adrian stepped closer to Leo. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Leo reached out his small hand, touching Adrian's sleeve without hesitation. Adrian froze. No one touched him like that. Not employees, not partners, not strangers. But Leo did, without fear, without expectation. Adrian looked down at him, something unfamiliar moving behind his calm expression. Gratitude, confusion, respect. "You saw him," Adrian said softly. Leo didn't answer. He just rested his head against Sophia's shoulder again. Adrian straightened and turned to the security officer. "Find Daniel." The officer nodded and left immediately. The truth was clear now. The drink, the warning, the watching figure. Someone inside his own security had been involved in something he didn't yet fully understand. But because of one small, innocent action, he had noticed. Sophia stood frozen, unsure what would happen next. Adrian looked at her again. "You can go home tonight," he said calmly. Relief and confusion mixed inside her. "Sir," he glanced at Leo. "He helped me see something I would have missed." Sophia didn't know how to respond. She simply nodded, holding Leo closer. But as Adrian turned back toward the screen, something else caught his eye. Another detail. Small, easy to miss. In the hallway footage, just seconds before Daniel appeared, Leo himself had briefly looked toward the hallway, before Daniel stepped into view, as if he had sensed someone there, before anyone was visible. Adrian stared at the screen, his mind unsettled by the thought, because it meant Leo hadn't reacted to what he saw. He had reacted to what he felt, and somehow he had known before anyone else. The mansion felt different after that night, not because anything had physically changed, but because Adrian Keller had changed. For the first time in years, the billionaire found himself thinking less about numbers and more about moments. Small moments, the kind most people ignored, like the moment a toddler moved a glass. Daniel was found later that night. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He simply looked surprised when security approached him, surprised that something so small had exposed him. Adrian never raised his voice during questioning. He didn't need to. The truth revealed itself in pieces. Daniel had been placed inside the security team by someone from outside the company, someone who wanted access, someone who wanted proximity. The drink itself hadn't contained anything obvious or dangerous, but that wasn't the point. The point was access, testing boundaries, seeing how close someone could get without being noticed. And they had almost succeeded. Almost. If Leo hadn't touched the glass, Adrian might have never reviewed the footage. He might have never noticed Daniel standing there. He might have never questioned the warning message. A toddler's innocent action had broken a perfect plan. The next morning, the house was quiet again. Sunlight passed through the tall windows, soft and warm. Sophia stood near the entrance, holding Leo's hand, unsure why she'd been asked to come back. Her heart still carried fear. Fear of losing her job. Fear of stepping into a world she didn't belong in. Adrian entered the room calmly, dressed as always, controlled and confident, but there was something different in his eyes, something less distant. He looked at Leo first. Leo looked back at him, calm as ever. "You helped me," Adrian said quietly. Leo didn't understand the words, but he smiled anyway. Adrian turned to Sophia. "You were afraid last night." Sophia hesitated, then nodded honestly. "Yes, sir. You thought you had done something wrong." "Yes." Adrian paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "You didn't," he said. The relief hit her slowly, like warmth returning after cold. "This house runs on trust," Adrian continued. "And trust isn't built by perfection. It's built by truth." Sophia listened, unsure where this was going. Adrian reached into his pocket and handed her a small envelope. She looked at it, confused. "It's not charity," he said, as if reading her thoughts. "It's recognition." Her hands trembled slightly as she held it. "For your honesty, and for bringing someone into this house who reminded me of something important." Sophia looked down at Leo. Leo simply held her hand tighter. Adrian watched them for a moment before speaking again. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the people with the least power see the most." He had spent his life surrounded by experts, advisors, and professionals. People trained to observe and calculate. But in the end, it wasn't one of them who revealed the truth. It was a child, a Maid's toddler, someone with no status, no authority, no reason to be noticed. And yet, he was the one who made Adrian Keller stop, the one who made him look closer, the one who unknowingly protected a billionaire. As Sophia walked toward the door with Leo, Adrian remained standing in the sunlight. His world was still powerful, still controlled, but no longer unquestioned, because now he understood something he had forgotten. Sometimes, the smallest hands don't just change glass. They change everything.